as the full moon rises through strange forest on a lonely road. At the signpost ahead, you have come to your final destination. Welcome to Greenwater Nightz with Sam Ritchie. Now, here's your host, Sam Ritchie.
Hello, my name is Sam Ritchie, and you're listening to Greenwater Nightz, broadcasting deep within the recesses of the Cascade Mountains, where normal and bizarre blend together, and what is taught as fiction, and where myth now becomes reality. Welcome to the world I live in, along with my friends, where the Bigfoot and little people are real, and ETs and UFOs abound, where strange lights and orbs appear, and yes, even portals opening up to reveal other worlds. An area not for the faint of heart, but for those seeking the truth, and in the process making astonishing discoveries about ourselves. One of my favorite research topics, other than the Sasquatch, are the little people, or as some people call the wee folk. Ever since my own personal discovery of them, living here in the Pacific Northwest, I have been fascinated with studying the nature of their existence, since they do show up quite a bit in my photos. In line with our topic of little people, our guest tonight will be Christina Schumacher, who also had similar discoveries, and we will be comparing notes and discussing what we have both discovered in our individual research of what she has termed Faeries. Christina Schumacher is an author 4 times over, a past life regressionist, a master handwriting analyst, a beyond quantum healing practitioner, and the list goes on. She has had a love of learning all of her life, and in 2016, Christina discovered her first fairy in a photo she had taken at Effigy Mounds in Harpers Ferry, Iowa. This began a whole new learning experience. Her life now revolves around photographing fairies and sharing them on her website, fairyquest.com. So it's my privilege to welcome Chris to Greenwater Nightz. We're just going to free flow everything here. I want the listening audience to have a comfort level. This is just not something, what's the word I want to use? So regimented.
Oh, yeah. Just a relaxed kind of interview.
And I need that really bad because I need to start relaxing on the radio. I think that's what causes me to stutter so much. I get nervous and I'm like, so petrified. And if I don't do it, the more you do it, the better you are. You know what I'm saying? So.
And isn't it funny? You could just talk to somebody who is sitting next to you without any problem, but you put a microphone or something in front, and all of a sudden it's like vocal cords seize up and...
Oh, I know. Now, you sound like I listen to your videos and everything. And my first observation, you're a pretty polished person on the videos. And so you must have done a few interviews yourself or have talked somewhere. Or I think based on your bio, which I'm actually going to read your bio out before this interview. I usually will record my introduction into it. And then I say the interview is now starting.
Okay.
Oh, I lost my train of thought. What was I saying? I was saying something about...
You were talking about having watched the videos and...
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So, based on your bio, too, it sounds like you're quite into a lot of different things, energy work, past life regressions?
Yeah.
Things like that? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I think I need some work on myself. But it was so awesome because you contacted me when I was on that major radio show that's Coast to Coast. You actually contacted me because you heard the program, I think. Was it the one on the little people, correct?
It was, yes.
Okay, good. That was a couple of years ago now. So you contacted me, and at the time you had a different website. I think it was Land of the Wee Folk.
Right.
And I went in there and started looking at the pictures, and I started looking at it. I said, my goodness, we're comparing notes here. She's getting the same thing I am. Okay.
Yeah.
And then life gets in the way of everything, and I had a ton of stuff going on in my life over the past couple of years. A death of a friend, and I was still doing the research. I was still having contact and experiences. But for me, it started out with the Bigfoot, and then all of a sudden, here's these little people, you know?
I started out with trying to get pictures of ghostly anomalies, and here's these little people.
Oh, okay. So you came in from that route.
Right.
So you had an aha moment. We're going to compare notes back and forth because this is so astonishing because there's so many parallels with your work and what I do, you know. And I had my first aha moment in December of 2015. We were in a research area called the Fortress that normally we had Bigfoot activity, and we've had a lot of interactions with them. And I was taking a picture of this one spot, and there was snow on the ground and everything. So I go and take a look on the computer, and what I see is, oh, there's a Bigfoot. Oh, wait a second, there's a problem here. So I started zooming in where the Bigfoot is, and of course I did a comparison picture a little bit later, and he's not there anymore. And it is a hairy Bigfoot-like creature, you know, being holding a little baby. But the problem was, I said, something wrong with this sizing factor. I'm looking down at the branch, and wait a second, and then I walked over there before. What I thought was this huge log, all of a sudden is this little branch, you know, and I put my foot on it. It says, this is a little strange. So a little later, I was looking at that particular picture. I was looking actually the comparison picture when that being wasn't there anymore, and then I started looking over behind these branches. You know, there's in the snow, the leaves are gone, so there's branches. And all of a sudden I'm looking, and I can't believe what I'm seeing. I says, there's a bunch of little hippies standing behind these branches with hairstyles from the 70s, and one girl wearing an amulet, and it was just humanoid, you know, like what we consider human. There were other kinds of beings. There was something that looked like a gray a little bit, and one looked like a Bigfoot. Is that the
picture you put on just recently on Facebook?
What's that now?
Is that the picture that you recently put on Facebook?
No, this one was a ways back, and I need to readdress that. What I plan to do is, those pictures that you've seen me enhance are some more recent ones.
Okay.
We've gone to a different, over the past year. So I'm doing a presentation next, it would be December 18th, based on when they actually hear this, because it will be this coming Saturday that this interview will actually be broadcast or available on YouTube. Okay. See, I'm losing it again. No, I'm actually doing a presentation down in Fife, Washington. It's actually for a group called Psychic Spectrum. And I've actually given many presentations there in the past, so it'll be a PowerPoint, so people will be able to see the pictures. And what I generally do is so they can see the scale of the entities, of the beings, is I start out with a large picture so they can get a scope of here's the main photo, and I'll paint this little bitty yellow circle down in the middle of the photo. And then I'd take another picture, and then I zoom in a little bit and show them that. Zoom in a little bit and then show them that. And then all of a sudden they start seeing this being show up in the little yellow circle. That way they have a real idea of being able to go into the photo and actually see, yeah, this is how small this guy really is.
Yeah, and people wonder, why are the pictures blurry? Well, you try to blow up something that is like less than a quarter of an inch tall.
Oh, yeah.
You know, why are they blurry? Well, because they're really tiny beings.
Well, it's I do talk about the nature of the beings. You know, we know their physicality comes and goes at will. Okay. However, if everything else around them tends to be not clear, the fault is generally the camera. And the thing is, you're taking a gigantic picture, and then you're trying to blow it up to this little bitty spot in this picture. Well, every time you blow something up, you lose what they call resolution.
Sure.
You know, and I noticed when I started out, I had my 8 megapixel camera at the time, and I did capture some things, but I early on I knew, you know what, I'm trying to blow these pictures up. I'm not getting enough detail. It tends, and the worse yet, I was even using JPEG photos. So what I found was I went and got a 24 megapixel camera. That means there's a whole lot of information. I could blow that photo up and actually still see some detail before it even tries to pixelate. And that's the key. The minute it starts to pixelate, you're losing the battle already.
Well, that's where, when I started doing, and there's videos on my YouTube channel now showing people how to try to take photos, of the little people, kind of sharing with them how to do it, and step by step. And what I did find was that a lot of people like to use their mobile phones. And the problem with the mobile phones, if they're not set just right, then they'll go to try to blow up the picture or make it larger so that they can search it, for the little people. And when they magnify, it ends up looking like a watercolor painting, and you couldn't tell a leaf from a stick with a mobile phone. So I try to encourage people, get a digital camera. You can learn how to work that just like you can a mobile phone, but the pictures come out so much better with a digital camera for finding little people. The magnification is so easy in comparison, and there's no watercolor effect.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, sometimes I wish I had an even greater camera. I mean, you've seen some my pictures is improving my enhancement techniques, to be able to show a comparison side by side so that you have a really clear picture of what you're looking at.
See, and I don't do any enhancements on mine at all. I cut them out and put them up there. I had a real problem with actually considering even lightening them, and I've kind of decided that maybe sometimes that is necessary. Otherwise, nobody's going to be able to see anything. Yeah, I don't do, anything for enhancement or anything on my website or the, any of the YouTube videos. Just what I get is what I get. And part of the reason for that, when I shared with you that I had 4 books out there, the very last one I did with a guy in England. He found me through a website we used to have. We started something called Night Watchman Chronicles in 2004, and I finally let it go in 2017, so it was long running. He contacted me and wanted to know if I would be willing to do a book with him. Well, he was taking supposed apparition photos. And we did a book together, and thankfully I did the historical part of the locations that he was going to. He did the pictures. Thankfully the book will stand on its own, because instinctively I kind of knew something wasn't quite right with these pictures, but no matter what paces I put them through, I could not debunk them. So I went ahead and did the book with him, and finally figured out through a friend of his how he was actually doing these pictures, and they were not real, okay?
Oh, really?
So I received quite an education. I mean, I like to give a person the benefit of the doubt, okay? But these were they were different, where you could almost tell that they were cutouts. But no matter what I did with the photograph, I could not prove that they somehow were put together. And yeah, it took about 3 years, and finally discovered that yes. And now here I am trying to show people that I've taken pictures of little people. Now, how isn't that ironic?
There is a balancing point about deciding how far you go, because you're going to have what I call the blowback from different people about the pictures, and they do the same thing with the Bigfoot pictures as well. I'm on my group on Planet Sasquatch on Facebook, for instance. The key word is respect for whatever someone posts. And
right.
True, someone posts a picture and it's either too dark, or you have these really dark spots, okay, on the photo. Well, I know already that those dark spots are clues that something's in there, because that's how they emanate their light. They're kind of more in the UV spectrum, and we can't see anything in that, and it appears as jet blackness to us, But that's not always true, as you could tell with other things, like even your own photographs. Depending on the beings, for instance, they can appear in the color of the background. So what I find is they try to match up so closely with their surroundings that you think it's part of the environment.
That, for me, is usually a clue that something's there, because they don't quite make the green color. They're just a little off. Even though they're trying, they don't quite make it. So the eye gets drawn to that rather odd green that doesn't quite fit.
Don't you find that it's an eye training thing? In other words, you got to be so good at noticing different slight shading differences between colors to be able to see their outlines and see who they are.
And it takes practice. It's not something that most people will just jump right into and go, oh, I've got 50 of them in this photo. And there is absolutely no reason why you can't have 50 in a photo. There are. You just have to be able to see them.
There may be a limited number of Sasquatch or larger beings, but I'll tell you what, when it comes to these folks, or the little ones, and the ones 3 inches, 2 inches, 1 inches, maybe even smaller, and I've caught some that were really
tiny.
Micro size is what I'm calling. We're talking about probably millions.
Yep.
Millions. Which means that they just don't exist in one particular area. They're everywhere. I had some pictures that I had taken outside my cabin, and I ran this electromagnetic device I have that, I don't know, sometimes when you got spinning weird energy, their curiosity causes them to come closer. And if you have a psychic sense to yourself, you kind of go, something's telling me to go back there and take a picture of my backyard. And usually that's what happens. I'll go out in the woods, I'll play the flute, and it draws them in. And then I talk to them. That's what a lot of people don't do. I'll just have discussions out in the woods with them. I'll play the flute. I even have a specific call for them to come out, and I'll play them a few songs. And it says, if you guys are out watching me, try to wave or do whatever, and while you're busy doing your things, and I'll take pictures. And then it's like Christmas for me to go back and load them on my computer and see what I'm finding. It's absolutely amazing. And I don't even share but a fraction of the stuff.
Oh, well, you can't.
No,
I
have to do the best ones for people to see. Because
yeah, if you're like me, you have thousands by now.
Yes. Oh, I can't keep up with it.
No, there's no way.
I can't keep up with it.
No.
What's amazing is you have a categorization system where you number your photos. I do the same thing, actually. I link it back to the original picture number so I can figure out the date and time. And then I absolutely have to always have the original photo where I put the circle on, or in your case, in your videos, you show the little red square where they're at. That way you could always go back to them and go back and pinpoint.
Yeah, I actually keep my original, and then I make another with those. Every one that I find on that photo, I will make a red mark. And so my marked picture has all of them from the one photo, and the other one has nothing. And then, of course, you crop out each one so that if you need to show, somebody a picture, you've got all of them individually too. But so many times, and I didn't do the marking of the photo in the beginning for like the first probably 6 months. So now when I have to go back to any of those photographs, I have to go through the picture over again to try and find that little person, that specific one. And it's so frustrating. It's like, why didn't I think of the marking system in the beginning? And
I got busy and got lazy and lost my original. Well, I didn't know. Keep in mind, I don't lose. I make what I do is when I have when the camera gets filled with the SD chip that's in there,
Right.
I take it out. I don't even bother to try to use it again. I'll take it out and buy a new SD chip. I'll take that SD chip and store it away. Well, before I do that, I'll load everything into my computer. So it's on the SD chip, it's on the computer, and it's on a backup drive. And that's just to make absolutely sure that I never lose the original photos. And what I do sometimes when I do the breakdowns, then that's when I try to segment off, okay, here's the starting photo, and now I know you do different folders and stuff. I would have to have 1,000 folders to do the stuff, just like, I mean, but I so appreciated your videos because you systemized everything. So, darn it, she's good. I'm thinking to myself, and it's just amazing the parallels of what you were doing and the same thing I'm doing with my stuff. And of course, I use, your best tools in the world are when you get the photo on your computer. It's when the fun starts. I just use the photo viewer on Windows and use that one to and I got one of those touch screens where I can put my fingers up there and just move it around until I find what I'm looking for. I'll screenshot it, I'll do a control print screen.
Right.
And then I'll pull it into what I have Paint Shop, Corel Paint Shop, which is the same thing like Photoshop.
Sure. In
a lot of ways. And I will get it in there, and then I'll use some key features. And I think part of it is like light. The best ones I use is like lighting and contrast and light fill and fade correction. These are some of the key ones that really make things pop out. Now, those are all part of those enhancement things that I do.
Right.
And I think I do it for my own satisfaction. And also if I'm going to post them, I'm not going to post something that most people are going to say, I don't see. I don't want that barrage of ridicule.
That's why I really try to pick and choose very carefully. And I use my husband as a gauge because his eyesight isn't really that good. So if he can't see it, I don't use it.
Oh, if he sees it, he's a good gauge then.
Yeah.
He's my filter. Here's my human filter that allows me to know if humans can see it or not.
Yep.
Well, I don't have that, but I become kind of adept at knowing how people see things. They don't see detail. They tend to gloss over things. They're just so used to solid things and solid lines around things and outlines. And if you were to put a haze around a human, for instance, if I took a picture of you with a lens that had Vaseline on it and then showed somebody and says, I don't know what I'm looking at. Even though you would be able to tell that there's a human standing behind it. It's just so I try.
It is that their brains just can't wrap around the idea. If you've been dealing with, Sasquatch, Bigfoot, trying to put evidence for that out there, people are used to hearing about that now. It's been years, but suddenly you throw little people in the mix. And they're just like, you people have lost your minds. But yet, there it is. It's in the photo. But with technology the way that it is, everybody wants to scream Photoshop. But, and it's like, it's not. It is, you can show them the actual photograph. And you can blow it up for them so that they can see it, like you said, in the yellow circle. And still, some of them will be just like, nope, you put that in there somehow. Yeah.
I know. When I first did my very first video in 2014, I was at a conference for Sasquatch, and I was talking to my good friend Barb Shoop. I was sitting talking to her. I said, Planet Sasquatch sounds good. So I set up a YouTube channel. So I do a video, and the title of it is How to Find Sasquatch Using Photoshop. And boy, did I get crucified for that. I didn't realize, different people when you're trying to do something different than what people have been doing for years and years and years and not really getting good results. Anytime you're a game changer or doing a different paradigm or a different way of trying to approach this research, I guess you want to call it, then you get people that goes against you on that, you know? And
I think it is partially because they just can't admit that maybe, just maybe, somebody else has discovered something that they've never seen.
Well, they don't allow themselves to see it because they stay within a box.
Yeah,
it's one of my favorite expressions. Yep. And especially when they tie themselves so closely to the scientific community or to, they don't open the possibility that perhaps you're not dealing with, you're not dealing with an animal. And, it's a stretch for some of these people to even think that there's an intelligent being out there called a Sasquatch that actually is at our level or greater of intelligence. But then it goes out the window with some people when you say, maybe we're not even dealing with something that stays physical all the time, but can do certain things like cloak, have translucence or partial invisibility. It can create anxiety through infrasound and all these other things. And the problem is, there are experiences, and there's people that have those experiences, but no one wants to, it's changing now, but at the time, no one wanted to listen to those people. They want to ignore that as well. It's in your mind. Okay, then it's in thousands of people's minds then. Maybe it's in thousands of people's minds that they see UFOs all the time. Same difference,
It's kind of like a mass thought thing.
Right.
You ever noticed when you're, say, in Walmart or someplace, and, there's nobody at the checkout counter until you decide to check out. There's like a swarm of bees,
I call that the mob mentality. It's just like there's no checkers and there's 100 people coming and they all shoot for the one checkout register.
But it's like you think to yourself, I'm going to check out now. And the second that thought goes into your mind, I'm done. I'm ready to go home. I'm going to check out now. Everybody else gets that thought, and they're all there.
I think that's similar to, I don't know if you've heard this before, the 100 monkey effect. Have you heard of that before?
No.
Oh, it's a research where they taught, like, if they teach 10% of the monkeys in the world how to do a certain task, like get on a box and grab a banana, okay? And if they get enough monkeys to do it, there's this group consciousness that all the other monkeys end up doing it, even though they've had no physical contact with each other.
Well, isn't that kind of like what the birds do, too?
Absolutely.
Yeah, Somehow I don't think the mother birds, sit in the nest and say, okay, now when you're in a group, you have to fly the same way. It's just such a beautiful thing to see.
In the same way, humans have what I call group consciousness. It's a group telepathy. You get one thought, and all of a sudden, everybody else is thinking about that checkout counter. Well, they all shoot for it at the same time, coincidentally, supposedly.
Yeah.
Or how many times, and I like throwing this one out there, I haven't talked to my mother in a while. I think I'll give her a call, and then when you call, and all of a sudden, there's no ring, and I'll say, hello? And then she's calling you at the same time.
Yep.
And, what is that? That is, and that's happened to me a couple of times.
Well, it's an energetic thing. I mean, since we're all connected, it's going to happen. Not all the time, maybe, but, sometimes.
Well, I try to tie things now into the, since quantum entanglement and quantum physics is becoming more accepted, that I try to tie in about quantum entanglement, how, ultimately everything comes from the same thing. That means we're all connected. And
sure.
You affect one thing, it affects something else clear across the universe because it's all tied together. So I'm trying to show in some of my research, sometimes I do a presentation, that, it's not too much of a stretch to think that we're, that when something happens to one of us, it happens to another, or that we're able to communicate. And honestly, in regards to the little people, or in regards to the Sasquatch, I've been having more, I don't want to call it a little bit of that experience with group telepathy, because I put so much attention towards them, and when I see the pictures of them, there's an effect that happens. If I look at one of the little people, it's almost like I have a conscious connection with them when I look at the picture. And then I start to feel things empathically. about how they're feeling. And then I go look at your video that talks about that communication.
Well, the dowsing that I do with them, that is mostly for when I used to have a metaphysical shop, and I would teach people how to dowse for their spirit guides. And just so that they could get their name and they could communicate if they wanted to and that kind of thing. And that's what that video actually is teaching, is how to reach the spirit guide first and then have them help bring in the energy of the little people from the pictures. And the more that you dowse, the less you need to dowse, because when you're dowsing, you will start getting the words in your mind. Mm-hmm. And you'll get more and more words in your mind, and pretty soon I can just now I can sit at the computer and I don't know if you can hear that siren or not, but it goes off in my town at noon and 6 every day.
Oh, that's fine. As long as it's not an emergency situation.
No, no, it's an old farming town, so noon and 6 is dinner time, or lunch and dinner. So somehow they just, they haven't gotten rid of the siren, but yet we don't have a tornado siren. So, but yeah, I can pull up Microsoft Word or, whatever I use for my typing program, and I can just close my eyes and type out whatever they're sharing with me from a photograph. And sometimes there's pages of information. Just keeps going. I just let them say what they want to say. I don't normally ask questions a whole lot or anything. I just let them go.
It's amazing because I'm kind of going down that same route. I use a pendulum to get my yes and no answers.
Mm-hmm. And that's what dowsing is too. Yeah. I just use an alphabet board.
I did find your the letter board. Mm-hmm. That I'm going to go ahead and print and put it on a flat surface or something, so that I could probably start doing that.
You'll be amazed how much information you can actually get, and before long you won't even need it.
Well, it was amazing, kind of along the lines of what you're talking about. There was one being, and this is when I was on the program back at the time you were listening to it.
Coast to Coast AM.
Yeah. And I was talking about Sal, the little white-haired man, and I had the pictures posted there, and I was talking to Connie about it, who's right. The host at the time. And so I said, yes, I took a pendulum, and I concentrated on communicating with Sal, and I got my yes and no answers. So I had a list of questions, so I did do a number of yes and no questions. I had them up somewhere, but the bottom line, I was learning more about them. One of the things that was kind of interesting was one of the questions that I had to do with how long you've been here. And it says it was a hard question for them to understand because time is so different for them. Mm-hmm. And that I started learning more about the nature of time. And then I read some of the beings that you've communicated with. I forgot which one it was. The ones that were that supported the seedlings. And if they sprouted up too quickly, they'd die with the sun, so they'd change the time frame. You might know what I'm talking about. It was one of the ones, I don't know if it was the water-bearing ones. Kind of think of Hilo.
Hilo, okay.
Maybe it was Hilo. They're the ones that carry the water and dispense it when needed. Yeah. And like I said, we're going to give your site at the end of the interview so that people can check this out. And I'm still going through it, and I wish I was even more prepared to talk or interact about certain things. But I did go through a lot of it. So you're getting into this whole thing with the wee folks. It really was an extension of all the other things that you were doing, like spirit guides and your communication that way. Correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I actually, like I said, we had Night Watchman Chronicles for years, which was a paranormal site. And as time went on, people started sending me photographs and said, can you see if there's something in here? Well, of course, I wasn't looking for little people at that time. I was looking for some kind of paranormal anomaly. And then I would read that photograph for them, and there would be an amazing message within this photograph they had sent for the person who took that photograph. As an example, and sometimes, it's like, okay, do I really, really want to send them this information? But I had a couple in Africa send me a photograph. And the woman had lost her horse, and it had passed away from old age, and she had made kind of a shrine for her horse in their backyard. And she had taken a photograph, and this, mist, I guess you could say, showed up in the first photograph, but it wasn't in the second one. They took photographs back to back. And so she asked me if I would please read the photograph, was there a message from her horse in there? And there was information, the horse communicating with her, but at the tail end, and I thought this was so tacky, and I almost did not put it in to the email that I sent back to her, but I got the Christopher Cross song in my head. Now it escapes me. There's a specific line in that song that related to, that she fully understood, because she had had a dream that she was dreaming about her horse, and the horse, or a friend of hers, had given her a piece of paper that this horse had dictated. So in her dream, the horse could speak to her friend. And the only problem is that the words got smaller and smaller and smaller as they moved from left to right, so she couldn't read the tail end of this message. I finished that message with what I sent her in the email. So she was like a believer beyond believer, and I've worked with them for years now with different photographs and stuff like that. Before I closed down Night Watchman Chronicles in 2017. Now I don't read photographs for other people like I used to, but yeah. So there were some fun things with that. And then I went to Effigy Mounds, which is in Harpers Ferry, Iowa. It's a Native American burial ground, and with burial mounds. And that is where I took my first picture of a little person, but that's not what I was trying to take pictures of at the time. It just kind of happened. I came home to look and see if I had found any paranormal anomalies, which I actually did. I found a doll that the sunlight had actually created. Can't be missed. And that one, I think, is on my YouTube channel as another type of nature being. And then also a stump that looks like a Native American man. It was a burnt stump. And you can see the Native American man in it. But then the little person was also within those photos, and he is called the Guard, or his name is Neder, N-E-D-E-R is what he shares. But he's a guard. And he actually looks like he's holding a kind of staff. And he's just a little guy. He's probably maybe 1.5 to 2 inches, standing at the base of a tree in the higher weeds or leaves. But that was my very first one in 2016.
Wow.
And from there, you get the bug and you're shooting photos left and right.
I know. It's an obsession in a way.
It really is.
It reminds me, and you could tell me if this, I'm going out on a limb here to say this. Well, people used to call people like us touched. Something touched us, Yep. But it does remind me of Richard Dreyfuss in the movie Close Encounter of the Third Kind. He had kind of a connection with the, it didn't say how he got the connection, but he was connected to one of the aliens, one of the ETs. And it left a vision in his mind so hard that he was obsessed. He was at the dinner table taking that mashed potatoes and throwing on. He was trying to find an image of what was stuck in his mind, and he wanted to visualize it until it showed up on the TV.
Right.
Then he was so obsessed to go to that spot. I don't want to say we're kind of like that, but I will say that, and when I do take pictures, and it's a collection of maybe 10 to 12 pictures out, I can't wait to get back on the computer and take a look at very closely. Generally,
you're smarter than I am. If you're actually taking only 10 to 12 in a shoot, I do like 100 to 150 in a shoot.
Oh my goodness! No.
So I still have a few on my computer that I have not gone through yet. I do them a little at a time. Going through those photos, for me, one photo can take me, I'm going to say, 5 hours.
That's about right. Yep.
Yeah, to go through and just be very thorough. And then I don't even enhance them the way that you bring the colors out and such. So that would take much more time than,
yes.
I have a friend, her name is Jane, and she has a website called, it's Jane Tripp with a double P at the end, .com. And she does kind of what you're doing with the enhancements, only she goes way down deep, and hers isn't little people per se. It is time travel.
Really?
So she is actually bringing forth, and you can go to that website, and she has 3 books that are free on there. One of them is called Why You Should Edit Photographs. The other one is How to Edit Photos. And the one in the middle is Proof of Time Travel, The Pirates of Time. And she shares, like I said, when I saw your photographs and what you were doing, you reminded me of what she does, only she goes even deeper than you do.
Really?
Yeah, I can't even describe. She's a fascinating person. We've become friends over the years, just because of what I did. She contacted me because she's like, geez, somebody else who, finds things in photographs, but I don't even hold a candle to what she can do.
Well, I do know that I've learned a lot just looking at them. And when I look at the pictures, and I'm talking about the ones I haven't posted yet, I take satisfaction knowing that I'm actually watching a group of them mill about, doing their work.
Yeah.
Some of the groups, like the villages, I kind of have an idea where the little villages are, So I get kind of close to there and I take pictures near there and say, hey guys, how you doing? I'll take a picture and look for them. So one time, my mind's just jumping on a whole bunch of stuff. But I will tell you, before I jump on this other thing, I have seen them, what I call blue out. They're changing from physicality to being invisible. There's a color transition where they start to turn blue color, and then they start to become very transparent, and then they kind of turn into this almost like this translucent watery effect, like cloaking.
I actually have a few of those. I don't know if I put more than one on my website. I'm trying to think maybe I put it under nature spirits, I'm not sure, but it's, to some people it would be considered invisible, but it isn't. I can't even really tell you. It's kind of like a watery outline.
Yes.
Is what you're seeing. But yeah, I've gotten, I'm going to call them invisible, where you really have to, I don't even know if you want to say squint, or they're there. You just really, really have to look for them, and they are almost invisible.
Right. Sometimes you shouldn't look so closely at it. You have to back off from
the computer.
Yeah, you got to back off from the computer and start to squint your eyes so that you can resolve it a little bit. See, the problem I'm finding is that the way people's brains work, they get overloaded by too much detail in the background, and there's no focus on certain aspects.
Right.
Well, you get that with training. But what I find is if you can blur it out a little bit, blur out the background, you get rid of a lot of the unnecessary detail. People can actually see what's in there better with a blurry picture than they can with crisp leaves, crisp this, crisp that. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I generally find, too, that when I take pictures, taking them in bright sunlight's not a good thing either. I found that something about the sunlight makes it even harder to, because then the shadows get more magnified. And I find a cloudy day where there's decent light is a good time to actually take pictures of that, of finding them and stuff like that. Even the Sasquatch, for instance.
I got a kick out of the fact that you name places that you go just like I do. You call it Field of Dreams, and I have one that I call the Mystic Trail. It's actually called the Heart of Iowa Trail, but I call it the Mystic Trail because it's where I go, and I haven't even walked the entire trail, and just a small portion of it, and so many of my photographs have come from that. Just that short stretch of trail. They're everywhere.
Well, there you go.
And you gotta love it. You do.
I know. I could go all day long enhancing pictures, and I do it for a while, but after a while, it's like, how many pictures do I need to kind of, I don't even want to say the word prove that they exist. It has made a major impact on the subscribers to Planet Sasquatch, for instance, or when I go and make my presentations and they see that comparison photos with stuff like that, it's like, oh man, they're blown away. And that's for good effect, because I want people to know there's more to this world we've been told. We've actually been not told the truth when we've been raised in this world. The world is a lot different than it really is.
It is. And, these are all things I know that we saw as children. Mm-hmm. When there's no, what do you want to say, societal
influence.
Pressures.
Yeah.
Pressure. On us. A lot of people talk about, oh, yeah, I had a little, invisible friend or whatever, and I spent all my time in the woods. We lived so far away from everyone that, I didn't have friends to come over because it was a 2-hour ride just to get to my house, No parent wanted to bring their child, or vice versa. So I spent most of my time in the woods as a kid. And I've found that much of what I did as a child is what I have grown up to do.
So you accomplished what you set about to do as a young kid. I mean, you followed your passion right up into adulthood. You're still going down that path.
Yeah. And, a lot of people wonder, what am I supposed to be doing? Well, these little people have actually given, some very good advice if you're looking for your sole purpose, so to speak, what you're supposed to be doing with your life. Go back to your childhood and remember what it was that you did in your play as a child, what you so much enjoyed doing, and you can find the parallel between the two.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. If in my case, as a child, we had a house that was situated with this gigantic woods or forest behind the home, and we were there a good 10 years. And every day after school, I'd jump the fence. We had a ladder, went over it, and I'd go out in the woods every single day. I'd take a rake. I'd rake little trails through the woods. I would clean up the trash. You know what? I honestly know that someone was watching me do that early on. And then I got involved in the corporate world. And then that sort of like, in the back of my mind, it's just like I fell into corporate this, corporate that. I don't want to get into too much detail about it, but did pretty well in the business side of things. And look where I'm at now. Right back to it. A totally different situation.
Apparently the corporate part is something that you needed at that point in time. Mm-hmm. And the things that, each thing that you do in your lifetime, it's almost like a stair step. You will use something that you did in your corporate time now.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it gave me structure. It did, right. And it helped. It helped put me in a better financial position where now I have the free time to do this, to actually do the research and to do talking with people as yourself, about this stuff.
I actually had somebody look at me and say, "You have far too much time on your hands."
That's a good thing. Well, then, are you jealous? I would say that to that person.
Well, she may very well have been. She was working long, hard hours at that point in time.
I wouldn't want to rub it in. I wouldn't want to rub it in.
It was kind of, I don't know if it was so much, she was Asian.
Oh, okay.
So, they work very hard. That is what life is about, is working hard for many of them. And, so what I was doing to her was absolutely a frivolous waste of time, and that's okay. It's total different culture, so didn't expect her to understand, and she didn't expect me to understand her viewpoint either. So that was okay.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that I used to know, and I think I've lost a lot of people in the process. Whether they kind of slowly disappeared out of my life, maybe out of embarrassment or the fact that, hey, Sam, oh yeah, then the patronization starts a little bit. Yeah, you do what you're doing, you just keep going. You have a nice day, I'm out of here. It's like...
Now, I used to love that, because my husband and I would go, as we called it, uptown to the local bar. And when I say small town, I'm talking 300-400 people, okay? And, they kind of get to know what you do. And at that point in time, we were going to the cemeteries and doing the EVP work, electronic voice phenomenon, and, doing videos looking for orbs and that kind of thing in the cemeteries. And, we'd go uptown and people would go, "Oh, you're the ghost people." And they'd go away. But then as soon as their friends went off to the bathroom or something, they'd have to come back to our table and tell us the story about when they saw, but they had to wait until their friends were gone.
Yeah, it's amazing. The peer pressure just really affects people like that.
Yeah, but they would do that all the time. People would just come randomly, and I was called the ghost lady at the antique store in Marshalltown here in Iowa, because I'd go in there and I was looking for old photographs that had strange anomalies in them. And you do find them from 1920s, 1930s, where they have very odd orbs in them, or they had, some very strange pictures. And back then, they were pretty hard to fake, because they had to develop the negative just a certain way. Mm-hmm. And so I ended up finding some pretty neat photographs, but, the proprietor asked me, what are you looking for in these pictures you keep coming in and looking for? And I told her. So from that point, I was deemed the ghost lady.
Well, they call me the Bigfoot person. I go to the local restaurant. They even have a white cup that has Sam on it, and they got a picture of a Bigfoot they drew on it.
Aww.
Well, that's the ultimate compliment, I suppose.
It is. It's wonderful.
I got a reputation in town. Yeah, and so does Barb as well.
I think that's great, though.
Yeah, it's not bad.
That really does open up, even if people start out with, kind of making fun, I think the more that they see you and the more that they realize that, yes, you're laughing with them or whatever, but you're still bringing forth more and more evidence. And they're watching you a lot more closely. So you're turning minds, slow but sure.
Yeah, it's affected the local population here, too, because they started out being a legend or a myth, but I was starting to show pictures, and some of them were getting pretty good. And with time, they're getting even better. Actually, had one of the members of Planet Sasquatch would set a note. Says, I showed a before and after picture, and it was of a little bitty 1-inch tall thing on a log, but the eyes were so clear. You saw the pupils and everything. And it was the before picture. He said, are your pictures getting clearer? Are they showing themselves more now? And I think they are. I think the veil's getting thinner. I often talk about that. And I don't know if it's just the people like myself and others that are, I always feel that if a person's heart's not in the right place, they'll never see anything, even if it's standing right in front of them.
Or if it's important for them to see, then someone out there is going to keep trying to allow them to see. In other words, universe, spirit, whoever, if it's something that's on that person's path, they'll keep putting it in front of them.
Or synchronicities.
Eventually they'll see it, but it could take years.
Yeah. Weird things start happening in their lives, and say, that's really weird. Why did this happen as often as it did? Or I saw numbers, kept seeing 44, 40, 44, or something like that. Some weird stuff all the time. And that's usually the universe. I did a show, half hour of that show, the first, one of my earlier episodes of Greenwater Nightz actually talked about times, about synchronicities. Spent a half hour talking about it. Yeah. And it was just weird. It was just great to relate the stories about how unbelievable it was that these synchronicities were in my own personal life, that there was no way it could be random events, or the laws of probability went out the window when it came to that. So I know
it was many, many years ago. I mean, years ago, where I remember sitting in a house that I lived with my kids, and I heard my son from the other room go, very frustrated. And he was probably 12 at the time. And I mean, he's grown and, almost 30 now. So it's been many years ago. But he was seeing, I asked him, what's the matter? He says, I keep seeing these numbers on the clock. And, so like I said, this was a lot of years ago, 18 years ago. And I'm like, what numbers are you talking about? And he's like, well, I don't know. It could be, 111 or 1010, and it was driving him crazy. Well, I had not been seeing those numbers or didn't notice. And probably, I'm going to say a week after he showed that frustration, it got passed to me, so I started seeing them randomly, and then he was no longer seeing them.
It's infectious.
Yeah.
I had a project.
Like, what the heck?
I had a project manager at the company I was working with, and I was talking about that. I was seeing 444 all the time. We'd run a process on the computer, and we'd have a counter on it, and I'd find a record that took an exceptional long time to print. To process, and it was stop on 444. And so I'm telling him about this, and he, just as soon as I started telling him about all this stuff, a week later says, you know what? I'm starting to see 444 too. And all of a sudden it became a conscious thing to him,
Yep. And I think eventually it has to be conscious.
Oh, it does.
You can't miss it, you can't ignore it. And I think that's the point. It's like, hello.
The universe is talking to you.
We are, Yeah. Mm-hmm. And, the same thing with, like I said, once you start, or the first little person you find in your photograph, and all of a sudden, if you're like us, your mind opens up to the possibilities, and you can't get enough photos. You just got to keep taking them, because you know that there's more and more. And I have never taken a photograph that two beings look alike. They're all totally different species.
Oh, yeah. I noticed the different kinds, too.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen the same one twice?
Nope.
I have.
No.
Oh, yeah. It was the group. It was one in particular, kind of has he has a mange around his face, but his face is clear. But it's kind of like a mange of hair around him. He's wearing kind of a really neat looking cowboy hat. It's some kind of hat like that. And
I love their hats.
I got him in two different pictures in two different places.
That's cool.
Same being. You can't help it if you keep going to the same spot and you keep taking the same pictures over and over and over again. I also caught a pigtailed girl in a couple of times, and she has bangs, and it's just unbelievable when you see her, and it's just, it blows me away. And then, of course, you have to temper it because you know that you're so excited about this in the beginning and you want to share it with everyone, and then you get that level of frustration that starts says, why can't you see what I'm seeing? And then they start ready. I've already gone through that phase, so I absolutely understand why that happens. Because
they call it pareidolia. And,
yes, of course.
I don't know. I mean, even as a kid, yes, I was seeing things in wallpaper and carpet, and, it's just my eyes could pick things like that out, just like little people, little faces, little whatever. So, yeah, that's what they term pareidolia, or, easily see something in the clouds, a certain shape, or, that kind of thing, and that's pareidolia. But, I've never known any of these pareidolia type things to constantly wear hats of many different kinds,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, or to have, perfect fingernails.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you saw the video on my YouTube channel that actually had what I termed little Bigfoot, little big feet, miniature versions of Bigfoot. There were only 2 that I've actually gotten. One was extremely clear, way, way up in the trees, and the other one was as we were driving to Arkansas, there's bluffs. And I was snapping pictures as we were moving, and I caught this little Bigfoot, probably the bigger of the 2 that I took pictures of. One was at the Mystic Trail, the other one was in the bluffs on the way to Arkansas. But there's a video on my YouTube channel of those 2. And you can see the toes and the toenails and everything else in one of them of this, and I think I called it miniature Bigfoot. I can't recall. But, that's something that I grew up with a father who was Secret Service, and his I had no idea what he did for a living. I wasn't allowed to know. But his big thing was he would come home with, at that point in time, the Inquirer, okay? And we would go through the Inquirer, and he would have me pick out things that interested me from this, as they call them now, tabloid, okay? Where the stories are so far-fetched they can't possibly be true kind of thing. And I would scrapbook, Bigfoot stories and stories about ghosts. And, I had this huge scrapbook from the Inquirer. Well, what cracked me up was when Men in Black, the movie Men in Black came out.
I knew, I was actually thinking about that when you were just mentioned that. I said I know exactly what, go ahead.
Yeah, well, in Men in Black, it was that was supposed to be the place that you went for the truth. Was the Inquirer.
Right.
And here was my dad, Secret Service, who would bring it to me and say, "Here, I want you to pick out what interests you." Well, I was probably 4 and 5 years old. He taught me Morse code. He taught me how to break cyber codes, things like that, as a little kid. And he would time me. So I would have, he would expect me to get a full page of code done in less than 3 minutes at that age. And, none of it do I remember now because, as the years went on, I didn't do it anymore. And for something like that, you don't use it, you lose it.
You want to talk about synchronicity. I wrote some notes down before we started the interview. One of them had to do with communication, and I wrote down CW, Morse code, before we started this interview. And the reason being is because I'm also a ham operator.
Okay.
And I understand Morse code, so I was thinking, I was thinking about the pendulum, how it get each character. I said, it'd be interesting if there was Morse code involved in something like that. And I will mention real brief that I have a picture that I posted on the group where there was some message in the water. And a third picture later, a few seconds later, it disappeared. But when I looked...
I did see that.
Did you see that?
Yeah.
It starts out with...
It kind of reminded me of...
Yeah.
Kind of reminded me of a domino, in a way.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah, but it had the dots and dashes a certain way.
Yes. And when I looked at it, it started out with an S. The next two Morse code characters that they put in the water were AM. And it was followed by 377, and there's an angel number for that. But the fact of the matter is...
angel number, but AM? Yeah. I mean, that's like, hey, I am.
Yes.
I exist. Hello.
Yep, and they probably knew I knew Morse code. I mean, they already know. They can tap in your mind and automatically know all this stuff. So there's. I always consider it like there's supposed to be two-way communication. Problem is, most humans got their receivers turned off or tuned down. They can't hear the messages, although they can hear the messages transmitting from you to them.
Well, and in so many ways, people are afraid to be different. You know, they're afraid to admit what they see. They're afraid to admit what they hear, you know, because they don't want to be ostracized by their friends. Oh,
right. And it takes a little bit to break away from all that. I mean, I think some people are meant to do that. I think we came into this life with that goal to break away from that. But some people, it all depends on the person.
Well, mine started very early. I was born on Halloween. Now that begins the whole thing, right?
I guess so.
So I went into first grade, and back then they didn't have kindergarten first. Went right into first grade. I think I was 4, and you know, as soon as the kids find out that you're, you know, born on Halloween, it's like witch. You know, you're a witch, and I could have gone one of two ways. I could have, you know, gotten very embarrassed and, you know, very self-conscious about all of this, or I could do what I did, and I embraced it. I started an actual witch club at recess.
Really?
Yeah, and all the girls were, like, really into it, and like I said, we're 4 and 5 years old, but we would bring in the teeth that we would lose, and you know, as part of our... what do you want to say, witch kit. You know, things like that. We would, you know, grab grass and grind grass and just, you know, and from that point on, it was not an issue with them. They thought it was the coolest thing there was. So you can literally turn lemons into lemonade. And even back then, I was not going to be embarrassed about who I was. Not going to happen.
You're a nonconformist, and you didn't bow to peer pressure, obviously.
Nope.
Yeah. Nope. I'm just like that. I went to the tune of a different drummer and never looked back. I just can't conform to the group. I just can't. And that's why sometimes it's a lone life you live after a while. Sometimes you get periods of your life where, you know, this is starting to get to me a little bit.
Yeah, when I spend a lot of time alone. I really do. Just because of what I do. And, you know, it's difficult to sit and you know, go through photos if you've got 15 people yakking at you, you know.
Well, so I value the time now. Yeah, I value the time now because, you know, I've been through my marriages, and I lost my spouse to cancer about 9 years ago. And I just, you know, it's just as well at this point in my life because now I have all this free time, and I use every bit of it to do research. I do it on the pictures. I do it with the other things. My goodness, we have other things that happen beyond just looking at pictures too. That's one aspect of my research, but I'm having contact in other ways. I got hit in the head with something up on top of this mountain. It like got in my mind, and with my eyes closed and saw a star map. saw a square grid pattern with a big white square in the middle and points of light that were in a symmetrical pattern. And it was that bright, and it lasted for 7 seconds. And I had my hand over my eyes. I was telling my friend Anita, I said, "Oh my God, Anita, you can't believe what I'm seeing right now." That was one of my more aha experiences that happened more recently, just in the past 6 months.
Okay.
So, but it doesn't stop. Our whole group here is addicted to the woo now. I mean, I'm serious, because we're having all these experiences now, and I have some of these things I've interviewed, like Barb Shoop and some of the ones on the earlier shows, where now portals are opening up, and we're looking in the portal, and like in Barb's case, saw a living room scene, and it opened up and closed back up, and my friend found his car inside this old building, which alludes to time travel, because he ended up in a warehouse for a few seconds. That was clearly not from this era.
No, my husband has actually been a double twice on me. When I say that, I'm saying that I see him go a certain way, and I go in the other room, and that's where he is.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's pretty disconcerting. And in fact, the first time it happened, I thought that he had gone upstairs. In fact, I saw him, and so did my daughter. We both saw him go upstairs, which is where our bedroom was at the time. And I was like, well, that's really weird. He didn't say anything that he didn't feel well or whatever. So I thought, well, maybe I better check on him. And I opened the door. I mean, we literally saw him open the door, go upstairs, go through the door, start heading upstairs, close the door. And I went up, and he was not there. And I'm like, what the heck? So I come back down, and I said, to my daughter, I said, you didn't see him come back down. I mean, obviously he wouldn't be able to go back down without me seeing him, but I'm still asking. And she goes, no, I saw him go up. So we're going around the house yelling for all we're worth. Where are you? He was in the bathroom. He never heard us yelling for him. And finally, when he came out, he says, what are you guys yelling about? I said, we're looking for you. He never heard us. And the house was not that big. He never heard us. And He'd been in the bathroom the entire time.
It's like we had heard voices. It wasn't me in particular, my friends were hearing voices late at night while they were in their tent, and they were hearing a discussion between two of the friends that were part of the campers, discussing about something, and come to find out that it was the friends, it was a discussion, but they were somewhere else miles away talking about stuff, but yet their voices were transmitted over here, and it was in a different time period. It was earlier that day. It's almost like someone recorded their words earlier, and later on that night, it was played back in the middle of the woods.
Okay, that's awesome.
I mean, it doesn't end. We have the orb sightings, we have lights, we have everything out here. I mean, the Cascades are like the most magical place from my standpoint. Obviously, that's what keeps me here.
I mean, other than little people, okay, in the photographs, I've gotten orbs, I've gotten dinosaurs, I've gotten many different kinds of animals, tiny, a dog with puppies, for crying out loud. I've gotten old rusted cars, little itty bitty cars.
Really?
I've got portals, actual portals that you can see. You can't see what's through them, but you can see that the portals are there. There's so many different strange things that, a person wouldn't expect to find in the woods. Real tiny.
Have you had this particular instance, and I know we're going to wrap it up here in about a few minutes or so, but the one thing I've been discovering, especially since they watch me from the cabin, or they seem to have my number, first of all. That's my favorite expression. They got my number. Once you have this conscious connection with them, It doesn't go away. It just gets stronger.
I was going to say it's because they know you know.
Yeah, I know that you know that I know that you know. It's like that.
Yeah.
So that game goes on. But the one thing I noticed looking at the pictures, since I can see the closer detail, I see devices in their hands. A lot of times I see the little square, look like devices near their mouth, and I've seen it several times, like 4 or 5 times. And the thought that comes across to me, yes, we got technology. Monitoring devices or devices for other purposes, and I'm thinking, well, why not?
But automatically people think, okay, if they're in the woods, it's our mentality of what we know of, say, animals.
Yeah,
they don't have
primitives.
technology. Yeah, they're going to be primitive. And, I'm sorry, but anybody who can live in the woods the way they live in the woods, they're not primitive.
No.
We're the ones who are primitive. We have no idea, we wouldn't be able to make it.
We're the ones codependent on a system.
Yes.
By design.
And they have it together. From what I understand, there's not a lot of war or anger. They all kind of live very, very peacefully together, all different species.
Those are all connected. They have that mental connection. If you already know what the other person's thinking because you're connected, it's just you can't really pull the wool over into nobody's eyes at that point, I have pictures of them holding camera. It looks like they're holding, because they're pointing in my direction. Hopefully it's not the barrel of a gun. I don't think so. Or maybe shoot me with an energy ray or something to make me feel better or something. But, it's just not me. I think people like us, I'm going to use that phrase, are attracting their attention because they don't see it that often. They don't see the kind of humans. And I left a comment on one of your videos as Planet Sasquatch, and I talked about when the human that comes with the light.
Oh,
that
on one of the
me.
Hasla videos.
Huh? Yes.
On one of the Hasla videos.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when the few people come and they have the light or the rainbow color or something around them that's so unusual from a human, normally it attracts them out and they want to see.
Granted, they probably have, if you want to talk chakras, they probably have absolutely amazing chakras.
Oh, I wouldn't doubt it.
However, when they see a human come in, they can exchange a little bit with that human because it's something that, like you say, they don't see it very often. And that energy exchange is probably almost like a zap for us, a zap for them.
Mm-hmm. But it's also an interchange, I think when that happens too, is you get a little bit of them on you, and they get a little bit of. There's more of an understanding that happens between the two.
Yeah, and I kind of chuckled that you had watched and commented on the Hasla. That was something I hesitated very big on doing. Is actually the Hasla videos, because people really think that I find, little people in my photos. Now I've got a cartoon character talking to me,
No, but the message, it was just so, you want to talk about confirmation, like me and my friend Anita, who's very psychically gifted, and we've been receiving these messages. And your message that came from a little person, I mean, you just translate it, you just basically pass it along in the video. It was spot on to what we knew.
Yeah, and Hasla she gives me the scripts, and I have to form the cartoon around what she gives me. So the entire script, everything that's in those videos is from her, word for word. I just have to try and make the cartoon so that people get it.
It was so entertaining. I sent links to my friend Anita. So you've got to watch this. This applies to, especially when you talked about the colors and how they spend time painting things blue. And I've been watching every single one of them. I mean, it was great. I absolutely enjoyed the videos.
Well, that's awesome to know, because they really haven't gotten a lot of viewage. It's like people, I don't know what they expect. But maybe it's the fact that they're kind of educational in a way, and people don't really like that in a cartoon. They want it mindless.
Well, sometimes, and that's why I use certain Facebook groups like the Little People of the Forest. There's several ones that are categorized for people looking for that kind of information. And what I generally do is I would join those and post, a video that pertains to a particular thing like Little People or something like that. So you might want to check out doing something similar on your videos to get it out there. I had a little bit of trouble finding the link to the website. I don't know. Google's not doing you a favor because it's not. There must be a lot of Christina Schumachers.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
And I can't find you in the for the Forest for the Trees on that one. So there are some things that you can bring up your ratings so that it'll show up more. And YouTube, it is a bit of a trick. It's just getting subscribers and building that up. It took a long time. I mean, it's been 5 years now.
And that's a problem now, isn't it?
Well, YouTube's changed their policies. They got other restrictions and rules. Yeah, it's going to be a real problem here. And
I actually had to mark all of mine as made for children.
I did too. I'm not going to run the risk.
No, which means, supposedly no comments will be allowed after a period of time, and I don't really care about ad revenue. That was what the big deal was ad revenue for most people, and I don't care.
I don't monetize.
No, I don't either. So, and I didn't on my other channel either. So, but yeah, I got rid of the Land of Wee Folk channel because... Yeah,
I was trying to find that, and I said, oh my, I said, I hope you didn't disappear off the face of the earth, and I was looking all over the place for you.
I was just terrified, once this all started with YouTube, that, they were going to nail me to the wall. Because, it's very difficult to know what to do with it because, personally, I'm not totally geared towards kids.
Right.
But kids would enjoy it, so you had to make a decision.
Well, you just have to, that's a whole different subject, which I don't even want to get into. But, I know at least for right now, for whatever avenue that's easiest to get the information out. And like I said, we're not trying to make a living doing any of this. We're just more concerned about there's a greater purpose to getting information out and helping people connect with nature. We really want humans to get back to the way they're supposed to be in the first place. The draw back to the woods, the draw back to nature, the draw back to harmony with this planet. And we have pulled away so far from that. It's tough to figure out how we're ever going to get back. And it may take generations upon generations for us to finally get back like the Sasquatch are, or like the Little People are, where we have that complete harmony, where we communicate with them, which means that we'll have to get our abilities back. The same things they do, I think we can do it too. We just became so 3D that we lost ourselves in it.
And they would be more than willing to help.
I'm sure of that.
Help us get back, and it's not like they're scarce by any means, but with all the fires, in California and all that wooded, I'm like, where are they going? Well, they have other dimensions they can go to. They don't have to stay here.
Well, it's interesting you brought that up, and I'm going to mention this. We had a huge fire here that literally threatened where I live here. And it was the big one around Mount Rainier, and it was like 55,000 acres was burnt.
Wow.
And I'm thinking to myself, think about all the beings that are out there.
Yeah.
One trail I went, I knew there were some little people along this one trail that I took, and then the fire came. I says, I wonder what's happened to them. My friend Anita, she's driving up to the top of one, I call it Mud Mountain Road or whatever. She's feeling thousands. She's feeling their spirits. They're like congregating over here on this side of the mountain. They basically escaped from that side, from the fire. They're all over here now. Yeah. So there are so many beings that have kind of had to migrate away from that area until it heals itself from the fire.
But the nice thing is that they can do that. They're not like solidly tied to the earth like we think we are.
No, they can always return back.
Yep.
And you're right. There is another dimensional aspect that they can slide in and out of different zones. I call it.
They're just, what do you want to say? Much more enlightened than we are.
Well, someday we'll get to that point.
Yep, I have no doubt.
Yeah. Well, Chris, I think it's been great. We've been talked for quite a while, and it's just so amazing some of the things that brought out. And I look forward to maybe us talking again, because I think it's a learning experience not only for other people. It's us, for me too.
Oh, I agree.
There's, I mean, just think about having the ability to have a communication channel with the little people, or a communication channel with the Sasquatch, and having that is almost priceless to me. That is more important.
I truly think it's possible for anyone who has the desire to do it. The only thing is that you have to start out at what I term, as I did, the turtle pace,
Yeah.
And then, the more in tune you get, the easier it becomes. And then, at that point, you really don't need any tools per se, just your mind or heart or whatever, wherever it comes from for you.
Right. I want to give you the opportunity to just go ahead and give me your website for the listeners, so they know where to go to, and perhaps also the YouTube channel.
Website would be faeriequest.com, and that's FAERIEQUEST. And I spell it that way because I don't want anybody to think this is like Walt Disney fairies. This is fairies of all species. They're all fairy species. Anyway, and then it's the same thing for the YouTube channel. It's Faerie Quest for the YouTube channel as well. That's fairly new, so whether anybody will find me, I have no idea, but that's what it is.
Well, I think with time that people will find, and of course through shows like this, what I generally do is, along with the audio, wherever it appears, I'm on two channels. I'm on YouTube and also on Podbean. So I always try to put in the description a little bit about my guest, and also a link to their sites. So hopefully people will click on that, and that'll be great with that. So anyway, thanks, Chris, and we'll talk to you again soon, I hope.
It's been fun, Sam. It has.
Okay. Well, you're listening to Greenwater Nightz. I'm your host, Sam Ritchie. Stay tuned next time for the next episode of Greenwater Nightz. Take care.